But we begin this morning with a proposal to add a third track to the Long Island Railroad, a measure meant to ease the constant congestion and delays, but an idea that has also had for a long time opposition. TV 1055's Jennifer McLogan explains.
The LIRR is part of the MTA, thus controlled by the governor. And right now along the main line, Governor Cuomo's vision for the railroad, building a third track, is not a popular one among many home and business owners. What is your biggest beef?
Well, the biggest beef is during the construction phase, which is going to take from 6 to 10 years. It's going to totally put me out of business.
Bill and Ann Corbett, part of a grassroots movement, Citizens Against Rail Expansion.
Parking will be taken away. It will be scarce for our commuters, and I think it's going to really impact families.
The proposed third track would cost more than $1 billion and would run for about 10 miles between Floral Park and Hicksville, affecting communities like Belrose, Stewart Manor, Floral Park, New Hyde Park, Garden City, Mineola, and Westbury.
Our biggest concern is that we will bear all the burden and derive none of the benefit.
Floral Park's mayor worries about noise, traffic, freight, and displacement details are up in the air.
The third track is going through some of the most densely populated and some of the most mature communities in western Nassau County. So eminent domain will certainly be part of whatever the project would be.
But the governor says seizing property will be minimal. A third track would be a huge boost to the economy, he says, deliver faster, more comfortable service and lure more drivers out of their cars. Many commuters like that.
You need a third track here. The railroad's growing. More and more people are riding it. Have you been on the Southern State Parkway recently?
Maybe a third track is the best way to go, you know, speed up your transportation.
And joining us now, two supporters of Governor Cuomo's fast-track plans for a third track. They are Nancy Rauch Douzinas, president of the Rauch Foundation, which publishes the much-respected Long Island Index report on Long Island. Also, Dave Kapell, he is the co-chair of the Right Track for Long Island Coalition, which is trying to build support for the governor's plan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First off, for both of you, what's different about this plan versus what's been talked about for decades? Let me start with you, Dave.
The principal difference is that, first of all, it has the governor's support. And with that, the state resources to address many of the local concerns, most specifically with respect to grade crossings. There's 7 grade crossings along that 10-mile stretch that carry some of the heaviest traffic in Nassau County through very dangerous intersections with the trains. And the governor's committed to eliminating those grade crossings.
And that's kind of like the carrot in this, you know, carrot and the stick, because for a long time, many of these communities have wanted those grade crossings removed, have they not?
As far as I know, there's been some mixed opinions there. Right. Yes and no, because of the disruption it causes, but there's no doubt for safety, for noise, it's much better without. But I think, you know, the one thing I'd want to say as far as making the big point to how the index got involved in this and the foundation, it's got to do with, we've been looking at quality of life with all of its measures. And the economy on Long Island is not doing well. We're losing young people. We as a region are not moving ahead. And from all the work and studies we've been doing, the third track does more as one investment to change that.
How so?
That's what our research showed, that in fact it's going to bring new jobs, change the economy. I mean, we should have some of the numbers here, but the projection is that for, say, $1 billion, $1.5 billion investment in the third track, over 25 years you will have a $68 billion return. 14,000 new residents, many new jobs, better commutes, and I think what it means for Long Island is that it really enters the 21st century with having different kinds of jobs, young people, a new future.
Yeah, because the railroad says, look, you know, we have a huge system, and then we're here in a limited area geographically, so it's hard to compare us to other rail systems. That's part of the reason we have problems. But clearly, obviously, there's a capacity problem. And you know, would you get reverse commuters under this plan, as some people have touted?
Well, first of all, if I can put it in historical context, most people aren't aware that the railroad was built in 1844 to bring people from New York to Boston by train. This is before the Brooklyn Bridge, before the bridges over the Connecticut rivers. People would come out, start in Brooklyn, out to Greenport, take a ferry across Long Island Sound, and then get back on the train to Boston. The 2 tracks that are the subject of the project in that 10-mile stretch are the same 2 tracks that were laid in 1844.
Yeah, and our population has gone up quite a bit since then. Now, let me talk about
50,000 to 3 million people used to ride to the train station in a horse and buggy.
That shows you how.
Here we are 172 years later, and the capacity of our economy is limited by those same 272-year-old tracks.
And the plan has evolved, as we talked about. You know, at one time when it faced significant opposition in the past decades, it would have been a couple of hundred properties. Then it got, a couple of months ago, we were told only be 20 homes. Now the governor's saying no homes would be affected?
Yeah, but basically he's committed, again, this is a function of his commitment to the project to bring state resources to bear. They're going to have to realign those tracks in a way that allows them to operate the 3 tracks within the existing right-of-way.
Would that mean moving the other 2 tracks? Because
yeah,
so they'd actually move all 3 tracks?
Well, look, I'm not an expert on the project, but they're going to do what they have to do in order to realign the tracks within the existing right-of-way.
They definitely want to accommodate the local communities there, make it easier, not hurt people. I think they're going out of their way, and you know, they realize these communities are being asked to sacrifice.
Because that's what they say. You heard the mayor there. He says, hey, we take all the burden with the noise, the traffic, the construction. What do we get for a benefit?
With him that they will reap benefits. Those new companies, those new jobs, new housing. I suspect a lot, you know, a good number of those will be around those communities. Mineola already has benefited from that. Westbury as well. So
also those communities, they exist because of the railroad. They're the early examples of transit-oriented development.
The railroad brought the people.
Exactly.
So now,
and a lot of those people commute to New York on these trains, so that to have enhanced reliability of the system and frequency is to everybody's benefit.
Well, even the railroad's president has admitted it's been a tough year for them. We only had a few storms, but it derailed them anyway. And then there were several other problems with major track delays and problems with the tunnels. And so, you know, clearly something needs to be done. Even the railroad admits that.
No, but that's what this is. It's investment in a structure that can carry the people it has now and carry more. That's what the 21st century, that's what's happening. I'm going to be going to Japan. That's where they have the maglev, invented on Long Island, operating in Japan and China and Germany.
You know, the railroad is the vascular system of life on Long Island. If we don't make it, modernize it for the 21st century, our life is going to be constrained thereafter. You
know, this new plan, would some commercial businesses still have to give up some property? No homes, but would some of the businesses there have to give up some of their land?
There may be some necessity for eminent domain in the area of the grade crossing eliminations.
So the governor's prepared to use eminent domain on this?
I think they'll have to if they need the commercial property.
But I don't think they expect any problems with the commercial property. I know for a fact that Winthrop Hospital owns a few of those, and they're prepared to make a deal.
The other thing the local communities aren't taking into consideration is, I know in Greenport we had some big capital projects when I was mayor, and the activity in the business district associated with the construction workers fueled a boom year-round. You know, these guys, if they're there for 3 or 5 years building this, they're going to be patronizing the local stores, the delis, the food stores. You know, it brings activity. It's not all negative.
But some folks say it's the quality of life that brought them to these communities. These are small communities. They're quiet, tree-lined. And they don't have all that kind of New York City lifestyle.
But they can take the train to New York.
That's true. You know, they are deriving the benefit of it, and that's part of this argument. You know, I spoke with one commuter, and perhaps that just shows you the cynicism that's out there sometimes. He said, a third track? Oh, that'll just be another track for them to screw up.
Yeah. Well, I think they want to prove them wrong. There's no doubt that the railroad needs to do business somewhat differently than it's done, and I think that's where the governor's come in and is really trying to approach this project in a different way, respectful way.
And he said something's got to give. We can't keep up with this. Now, what are you going to do to persuade these opponents? Because some of them are saying they'll even go to court.
Well, I would really ask them to look at the facts. The thing is, if it does bring in the new business that are projected, their projections for for the kind of revenue, tax revenue that it'll generate, new people. I would just ask them, take a look at some of these facts. It's not fiction that we're looking at here.
Well, we'll see what happens. You know, certainly given new life under the governor's proposal. Nancy Rauch, Douzinas, and Dave Kapell in favor of it. Thank you for explaining what's ahead in this ongoing battle to build a third track, if it ever happens.